What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about the ban list. Now, I have to admit, unfortunately, I was out of town for work. During the drop, I had no access to recording software, so this is a bit behind when the peak sort of discussion time would come from this. So I'm going to do more of a quick takes approach, where we're just going to touch on some of the more noteworthy hits from the list. But I have to tell you, I'm completely pumped about it for a number of reasons. This was really the type of shakeup that I was hoping we would get for a while. If you guys remember the Banlist series from last year that I did when Ryan joined me on the channel, and we did a guest series kind of going through, we talked about Yata ad nauseum, and there were a lot of people who disagreed, and I said, I think this would be a huge thing to bring back, especially because of how long it's been banned, but it would definitely be a much less impactful card nowadays than it was in 2002 and 2003. I do still believe that. It remains to be seen what type of impact it might have in the format, but we will see when we get there. And then, of course, I talked about another card that we'll get to in just a moment in this video. But I do want to ask you guys, if you do enjoy the content, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos. My apologies for the delay in uploads. I've had some microphone issues that's made it impossible to record. I actually recorded a few reaction videos to some of the Blackwing support and other cards that were announced. Went to edit them and then realized they had no audio attached, which was just really frustrating, and so it sort of set me back a little bit. But we are going to get back on track with videos. So let's go ahead and just talk about some of the more noteworthy hits of the ban list. And I'll put the link in the description below to the ban list for those of you who maybe inexplicably haven't seen the changes yet. You can take a look at the whole thing for yourself. But first off, Mecha Phantom Beast Auroradon was banned. This move I definitely agree with, but I am a little surprised by. Part of me thought Halky Fibrax would get the one to be banned instead, but I actually think this is a better move. I think Auroradon enables the combos a lot more degeneratively than Halk does. Halk, with a combo like Deskbot 001 or Jet Synchron that can bring out Auroradon and continue to ladder up into Synchros, is far more impactful when Auroradon exists for obvious reasons. I do think Halk at this point is just not a ban-worthy card. I think it's definitely seen representation, but it's more often on the outside looking in, and if there's not a combo like this that just allows it to explode, I think it's probably an okay card for the format. Auroradon is a card that without Hulk existing would be a lot less impactful, but unfortunately you kind of have to weigh what does more for what, and Hulk does give benefits to a lot more decks, whereas Auroradon really wouldn't be played in Mecha Phantom Beasts because that deck is just not competitively viable. So Auroradon being hit is not shocking, but it wasn't exactly something I had expected. I do think it's a good move, and I think if Hulk ever does get banned, if they decide it's too much, we could very easily see this card come off. So something to think about in the future, whether or not we may see this card again. Now, Performapal Monkey Board Limited is one I've also predicted many times in the past and was a big discussion in our ban list series. The agreement that we had was that, Monkey Board couldn't come back along with Plush Fire at the same time, but if one or the other came off, it would likely be okay. Now, we haven't had enough events happening yet since the list just dropped last week to see what type of impact Monkey Board's going to have, but I'm really happy about this hit. I think it's a cool card, arguably broken just on paper, but it's been a long time. It definitely deserves a chance to appear in the format again, and with Pendulums getting a lot of support in Dimension Force, it would not be super shocking to me to see the deck really starting to do something. I do worry about its inherent weaknesses, especially versus some of the more dominant meta decks, but we will have to see what type of things people come up with. Happy to see Monkey Board back in the game, though, for the first time since what I believe is 2018, or 2017 perhaps, and it's definitely a welcome return. Predaplant Verte Anaconda being banned is actually something I'm okay with. I know that goes against the video I made last year where I said I think Red Eyes Fusion is the problem, and there is part of me that still agrees with that, conceptually looking at cards like Red Eyes Fusion, Fusion Destiny, and even Branded Fusion as way too generic and abusable, but the fact remains that Verte started to become such a problem and such a universal card used in every deck and every engine that even if I didn't think it was necessarily the problem, I think it was time to hit it. There's obviously people who are going to disagree, but I'm very much okay with this being hit. In the future, we could maybe look at bringing it back if the meta shifts and things change, but since they're not going to ban Fusion Destiny and Branded Fusion and all of that, this move unfortunately had to be made. it was just getting to a point where the format was too one-sided and dependent on this card, and decks that really wouldn't even play things like Dragoon and DPE and so on and so forth were playing them just because Verte exists, and I think that limits deck building and card design. So I admit I was wrong on this one. I'm okay with the ban to Anaconda, and I do think it had to happen. Yata Limited, I talked about it when the video started, but I still can't believe it's here. This is just crazy because this card was banned for almost 20 years. It was the first banned card in Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's just an absolutely crazy full circle to see it come off. As iconic as it is, I do think it's a lot weaker now than it was back then, but I'm certain that people will try to find ways to use it, especially because it's Yata. This card has not been playable for many people that are even playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Today. I started playing after this card was already banned, so it's kind of got a lot of significance to the game as a whole, and while Chaos Emperor Dragon was neutered to the point of being unplayable, Yata is still exactly the same as he was, so we will see if people come up with some kind of Yata Lock or Fluanderies combos that make this too abusable, but I'm pretty confident that Yata at 1 is okay and not going to be super detrimental, though I'm interested to see if it does see play. Time Seal Limited was another card we talked about in the Banlist series. I think this card is very unimpactful, especially at 1. It's just slow, and in most cases you're going to want to have any other card other than this, especially because it skips the draw phase of the opponent's next turn, so if you open this card going first and play it against your opponent, they still get to draw on their first turn, which means you're inherently playing down a card, and your opponent has more advantage than you just by starting the game. If Time Seal was at 3 and you could combo with things like Trap Trick, you might have an argument that the card could be usable, but other than people trying to maybe cheese this into things just because of what it is and force it to work, I don't think Time Seal is going to see much play at all, and I honestly wouldn't be shocked if they ended up putting it to 2 in a future format depending on performance. Red Rose Dragon Limited is part of the pile decks, or base decks as they were called. Certainly a decent card overall that was able to search out some plant targets, and we do know we have new plant support that's coming out already and is out, such as the new Therians cards, like Lily. So it's not the most shocking move, but not the move I would have made. I don't necessarily think it was like the hit to those decks, and I kind of think Verte getting hit and Hulk getting limited, which those decks were playing multiple Hulk, so it's really one of the only applications where I think it's viable. I don't know, it's not really a limit-worthy card. I don't expect this one to stick, but it just seemed like a quick reactionary move from Konami, so we'll see what happens in future formats, but I kind of feel bad for people who this got hit because I don't think this card's really all that problematic. Pot of Desires is back to 2, so people can't argue about how many to play now. Of course, 2 is a pretty good number. All jokes aside, this card really never should have been limited in the first place. I think 2 is fine, but I also think 3 is fine. At least putting it at 2 forces you to play 2 instead of 3, which means you can optimize your ratios just based on the limitations that are there. But I hope they move this back. I was very much against that hit. I didn't agree with it, and people are always going to be divided on this card, but I think at 3 is where it should be. At 2 is at least an acceptable place for it, where it's worth playing in certain decks that play a lot of 3-ups. Now, of course, the last card we have to mention in today's video, and there was a bigger list than this, we did see some other moves, but I really wanted to just hit on the noteworthy stuff, is, of course, Change of Heart being back to 1. This was a move that I called and said this was definitely a move I would like, and it's absolutely crazy to think that it really happened. Change of Heart is a card that has been banned for so long, it's just been synonymous with some of those broken cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'm just so happy to see it back because I've always wanted to be able to play with the card. I do think the game has evolved, you know, and you could argue that that's indicative of the power creep of Yu-Gi-Oh!, which definitely could benefit from some addressing, but Change of Heart is really just a going second card. It's definitely going to cheese some games, and people are going to be salty about it, but unlike Snatch Steal, it's not searchable, which I think is a huge thing to consider when you're looking at all of this. Overall, Change of Heart to 1 is very much something that's going to be interesting to wait and see, but I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't see a ton of play, at least not in the main deck. If you cite it in going second as part of a Lightning Storm package with other cards, it's definitely a good card to see, but everybody's going to want to play Change of Heart at least at first. Like, it's Change of Heart. It's been banned for so long, and I'm honestly happy to see them just making moves that people were like, that's never going to happen. Like, the ban list being smaller is great. Cards coming off the list keeps things fresh and interesting, and I'm really excited that they've taken it in that direction, especially with Yata and Change of Heart. I didn't expect 2, and I'm very much excited to see where that leads. So, my quick takes on the ban list. Let me know what you guys think overall. Did you agree with a lot of these moves? Were there some you didn't like? I mean, obviously, it's never going to be perfect. I didn't expect to hit to the Adventurer package. Not yet. But I do think that could be coming down the pipeline in a future list. Let me know what you guys thought of the video. Please like the video and subscribe, and leave a comment down below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.